Now let's move on to how to perform a independent sample t-test and a correlation. Now that you know how to input your data on SPSS, whether taken from Google form or whether you straight inputting to the SPSS, it doesn't matter which way as long as you have your data set on SPSS. Now let's talk about performing the statistical analysis needed to test your hypothesis. Okay, so let's start with independent sample t-test first. Okay, we gotta use the same data that we already created. So we got 4 participants so far. Let's add 6 more just to have 10. So just again, these are random numbers. You 30, maybe you got also 20 participants who are 28 years old, and then another 27 years old, and then you got 21 again, and finally you got 30 years old, right? And gender, it can be male, female, male, male, and then female, right? So let's just have all the gender in small letters. Okay, so since we have 10 participants, then we also have to create another random answers for them. So let's say we got 4 as well. And again, this gender variable is a reflection of this the first variable of gender. So male is 2, right? And then female is 1, 2, 2, 1, 1. That's it. So we got 10 participants, and now we want to create a independent sample t-test. So how do we do it? We just go to analyze, and then we go to compare means, we go to independent sample t-test. That's it. Sorry, now before we move on, I suggest to have this type of gender variable when you run an independent sample t-test. Why? Because SPSS requires you to have a grouping variable, right? The grouping variable would be the gender, because we want to, let's say, investigate whether there is a difference between male and female participants in terms of their opinion towards the legalization of marijuana, right? Or towards any opinion. So it is just a random topic. So the grouping variable is gender, happens to be a gender. It can be, let's say, level of education, whether there is a difference between high school dropouts and high school successes in terms of their opinion. But it can be any, the grouping variable can be anything as long as they are grouped between 2 categories. But for now, let's just take that our grouping variable is gender, because we want to investigate whether there's a difference between male and female participants in terms of their opinion towards the legalization of marijuana. So now let's go back to here, analyze, and then we go to compare means, and then we go to independent sample t-test. Okay. So first thing first, we have a gender of respondent using numeric, so we're gonna use this as our grouping variable. Don't use this one because this is in string variable, and again, SPSS requires a number for grouping variable. So you will use the numeric 1 and define groups. Group 1 will be 1 as female. Group 2 will be 2 as male. Okay, and continue. And then you want to investigate their opinion, right? So the variables that you will include in this dialog box is the opinion about legalization. You can go to options. If there is some kind of missing values, you can just choose whether you want to use a pairwise deletion or listwise deletion. But for now, let's just leave it at that. Continue, and then bootstrap is just to one way of measuring the level of confidence, but we're not gonna touch upon that at the moment. So a pretty straightforward movement here, and just click OK. And then an output dialog will pop out. There you go, you have this. Now, once you get these numbers, what you need to know now is how to interpret them, right? So SPSS can run so many difficult stuff, but at the end of the day, it's you, the human, who will interpret it. So let's move on. So this is the summary of the variables that we have included. We have female, 5, the total number 5, and then we have male. Total number of male is 5, and then what are the mean for female? This is 3, and the standard deviation is 1. So the distance from each individual score to the mean is 1. So it's pretty okay, but quite large in terms of only a small number size. And then the mean of male participants is 3.8, quite high. So a lot of male participants seem to be want marijuana to be legalized. And then the standard deviation is 0.8, and standard error mean is 0.37. Okay, so that's the descriptive statistics you have here. You got the mean, you got the standard deviation, and now let's look at the core of the independent sample t-test. This is the table that will tell you whether there will be a difference or not. So we have 2 rows: equal variances assumed and equal variances not assumed. Which row should I use? Well, independent sample t-test actually has one statistical assumption, that is the respondents that you include should be homogeneous. Okay, what's that mean? So it means that homogeneous sample, basically all your participants are in more or less in a similar situation, or in a similar or has more or less similar background. So it's fair to use them to compare in terms of their opinion among each other. Imagine if you have so heterogeneous participants, for instance, those who are age 45 above, and then those who are age 30 below. So quite a big gap of age, and that is not really homogeneous, and that might have an influence on the way your t-test will look like. So equal variances assumed, that means it will be reflected on the score, the value of the significance. If this number is more than 0.05, that means your male and female participants are not different. That means equal variances assumed. You have equal variances among your participants. But if this, for instance, is less than 0.05, that means equal variances not assumed. So what you need to do is to look at the results in the second row. Again, a quick recap. Look at the first row, equal variances assumed whenever you have a value of significance more than 0.05. If you have less than 0.05, then you take the second row as a result. Okay, so the fact is you have 0.582, that is way more than 0.05. That means we have more or less similar variances among all participants, male and female. And the first row we will take, and then this is the t-test, this is the t result, negative 1.372, the degree of freedom is 8. To calculate degree of freedom is n1 minus 1 and n2 minus 2, or that big N minus 2. You have 10 as total participants, so you just have subtracted by 2. So you got 8, and significant, the level of significance, whether your t-test is significant or not, you look at this column. And here we do not have a significant difference. Why? Because the significance value is way more than 0.05. It should, if you want to have a significant difference, if you're expecting a significant difference, then this should be less than 0.05. The first row, and this is the t-test, our t-statistics, this is our degree of freedom, and this is our level of significance, or p-value, our p-value, that is p equals to 0.207, and this is not significant. Okay, so that's how you read your, how you interpret your independent sample t-test. And now let's go to correlation.